The COYGIG Pod on OTB Sports, in association with Cadbury. A player and a half deserves a glass and a half of support.
Lily Agg scores one of the most important goals they have ever scored. What a moment for the Republic of Ireland.
Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the COYGIG podcast. I'm Kathleen McNamee and I'm joined by the one and only Karen Duggan, who's so talented. She managed to win player of the match after the Ireland game versus South Africa without ever taking to the pitch. Now, some of you may know Karen often appears on the television analysing Ireland games, and after the Slovakia match, the excellent Mary Hannigan, who we are massive fans of on this podcast, an excellent writer in the Irish Times, deemed Karen the winner of the match, writing Stephanie Roach alongside George Hamilton in the commentary box chose Jess Zhu as her player of the match. A perfectly fine choice, although this couch would have opted for Karen Duggan. True, she wasn't actually on the pitch, instead playing just to the right of Lisa Fallon back in Ortiz studio, but no matter, her contribution to the evening was stellar. The very best thing about Karen Duggan is when she looks a touch menacingly through her spectacles on hearing platitudes about this Irish team when the focus is shifted to their off-field activities rather than what they do on it. Karen, I cannot tell you how much joy I got reading that in the Irish Times the day after the match, and how much joy I got telling you about it when I realised you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, I'm really happy for you. I'm actually going scarlet here. I know this is a podcast medium, but I am beetroot. Look, lovely words, but menacing. I actually kind of appreciate being called kind of menacing looking. That's the vibe I'm usually going.
It was funny when I read it. I knew the exact look that she meant as well. Whenever you have your kind of gold rimmed glasses on, and I say something and I just see the glasses go down, and I'm like, oh, I'm for it now.
Well, look, to be fair, I don't think I ever really got player of the match when I was on the pitch, so I'll take it.
Well, we feel very blessed that you came back to us today with your newfound fame, and I look forward to many more Mary Hannigan columns about you in the future, because it certainly brightened my day. I actually have it clipped out of the paper and everything, just for a little COYGIG memento to have.
Yeah, nice memento, I suppose.
Yeah. It's always nice to have your talents recognised, even if it is for being slightly menacing.
Look, it was reflective, I think, of the game and the questions that were being asked. So maybe when they win the playoff, I'll be back to my cheery, chirpy self. I haven't shown that ever, but I'm sure I would.
I was going to say, I look forward to playing this clip back when that happens. And the COYGIG Pod on OTB Sports is in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team. Now, last week we brought you a bumper preview ahead of the Women's Super League season, which was supposed to start the weekend just gone, but owing to the death of Queen Elizabeth, it was postponed alongside the rest of football in England. So we won't have any review for you today, but we thought this would be the perfect opportunity to take a look at the Women's National League and how the season is going. And we couldn't have chosen a better week, really, with some massive changes happening over the weekend in the title race. Karen is sitting there smiling away, happy as
It's the first time in a long time I would have been smiling if we were doing a WNL preview or review.
I know when it was first mentioned, you were very much like, don't know if I want to do this. And then you had a great weekend. So we will be talking to Alanna Cunnane about that later on in the podcast. Emma Carroll will be back with us next week for her team of the week. But for now, Karen, how did you find not having any WSL games at the weekend? We were kind of pumped.
Yeah, it was weird because we were all psyched for it and we were kind of looking forward to, I guess, this season on the podcast and really having an in-depth look at things, and bumper episode last week and then jinxed it basically. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, you understand maybe security concerns around some of the men's fixtures, but I don't think those same security concerns are there for the women's game. And I know there's a mark of respect, but I'm kind of on the same thought process that minute silence and playing the national anthem, I think that would be kind of a nicer way to do it. But again, I suppose we're removed from England. It's completely different mindset and things over there, so I guess we just have to roll with it.
Yeah, I think most people I saw were quite confused by it and agreed that having some sort of ceremonial thing before the match or the black armbands during the game, those things would have meant a lot more than just cancelling it outright, because I also think you don't really have the night by cancelling everything, you're just kind of stuck at home by yourself. And if you are someone who's upset by the news, or, you know, someone who the monarchy means a lot to, you surely would rather be with people and celebrate a life. But again, that is a very Irish way of looking at things, where someone dies and we're like, let's have a party, or let's have a big, you know, celebration of their life. So maybe it is just coming from that. But I thought as well, you know, we had Martin Lipton on Off the Ball this week, and he was saying that even the children's levels of things were cancelled, and to him that was taking it a bit too far. He was like, I can understand the bigger games, but especially for kids who just want to go and have a kickabout on a Saturday or a Sunday, it seems quite unnecessary to have it down through all the levels. And it's especially disappointing for the WSL, because we were expecting some big games in big stadiums, and getting those rearranged is going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah, because like there were some really good fixtures there, and like say it was kind of the bounce from the Euros in England and all the ticket sales that went into that, and we had some really big billings. Obviously looking at kind of City and Arsenal setting out their stall for the season, it would have been really interesting and really good way to kind of kick off the season. So yeah, it's just disappointing all around. Yeah, going down to kids levels again, I don't really get it. For me, I understand security concerns, but I don't really see the need to take away people's routine and joy, and people find their own way of marking their respect. And I think that the clubs would have done a really good job. And I think the fact that these big games would have been showcased in front of a big crowd, it would have been a nice way to mark their respect. On the flip side, maybe after the Euros, some of the teams would welcome it, given that they get an extra week of pre-season, essentially an extra week to develop a style of play, particularly the teams maybe that signed a lot of new players. Maybe that extra week will stand to them.
Off City.
Something like that. Yeah, I'm sure they won't be overly upset. But then when you get yourself up for a match, and then it's you don't know when it's going to be rescheduled for, you've put a lot of time and effort into analysis and coming up with what shape you're going to play in the week previous. Now they're professionals, they'll obviously reconvene and look forward to the next game. Do we know, has that been confirmed though, when the next game?
So the FA have said that games can go ahead this weekend, but it's dependent on individual clubs and what they can set things up for. So say in the Premier League, they've postponed 3 games because they can't get adequate policing for it, but they haven't officially announced which WSL games were going to go ahead. From most of what I saw today, it's thought that all of them will go ahead, because none of them will require the levels of policing that a men's game will. And I think a lot of them are being held outside of London as well, which helps, because I think that's the place where there's the main amount of concern that they won't be able to provide the people for it. Like, I think there's maybe 2 games in London this weekend between Friday and Sunday, so it's not as bad.
Well, I mean, like, it's just another fixture now to be played, and again, there's another stop in the league in October for, you know, World Cup playoffs and an international break there. And are you going to play that game midweek, getting closer to those playoffs? And how will international managers feel about that? Or will it be pushed more towards the end of the season? And then towards the end of the season, you've got things like more injury concerns, fatigue, particularly the teams involved in Champions League potentially. So it's just a little bit of a headache. So the fact that it's going to go ahead this weekend and there's not 2 games to reschedule, I think that it's in the best interest of everyone, really.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of similar in the men's game, where the teams who are going to find it most difficult, like your Chelseas or your Arsenals or even your Cities, the ones who are staying in competitions for longer and who have more fixtures, it's going to be very frustrating for them, I imagine, if they're trying to set it up at the latter stages of the season. And I'm quite annoyed that Arsenal don't get to play City last weekend, because I feel like this would have been a prime time to take them on and get some points on the board. But alas, I will just have to hold out hope that we remain uninjured and we have a disastrous season. Pick of the fixtures for this weekend, there isn't any massive ones, but I say Liverpool-Chelsea will be interesting just to see. It's a tough one for the first match Liverpool have to play in the WSL, and they get the champions who are going for 4.
Yeah, but in a way, is it nearly better to get that over and done with, and straight away you see the level that you need to get to? I mean, not to be always bringing it back to Ireland, but Ireland played Sweden in that first qualifier, and they did it well in Tala, but Sweden did, like, they controlled the game very well, and it showed the level that Ireland would have to get to, and then they did really well in the subsequent games. So maybe this early kind of shock to Liverpool system will be just what they need, just in order to really fully understand the difference between Championship and WSL.
It's a very good point, and I still feel like this could be a bit of a scalping for Liverpool. I just feel like Chelsea are going to come.
I'm just trying to put a positive spin. The new chirpy me that's not medicine is just trying to be positive.
I was going to say, I was like, who is this dude? She's scared. Are you afraid of Mary Hannigan's column off this COYGIG podcast? Yeah, and then we have other fixtures. Arsenal, Brighton, United face Reading, Aston Villa plays City, West Ham face Everton, which could be an interesting one because the two teams where I'm not really sure how they're going to line up or how they're going to fare this season. And then Leicester against Tottenham. So yeah, hopefully by this time next week, the matches will have been played and we will be able to bring you a proper weekend review. Delighted to say that we are joined by WNL expert Alanna Cunnane to talk about the season so far, and of course our very own Karen Duggan, who apologises in advance for any bias that may or may not come. I don't apologise. And normally when we start off one of these, we would be diving straight into the football, but the actual stuff happening on the pitch hasn't been the biggest story in the league, unfortunately, the last couple of days. Galway have released a statement saying that they won't be putting a team forward for the 2023 league. They said that they wanted to acknowledge all the great work that local clubs have done for the development, and that they would have continued to develop so many different internationals and several from our club featuring at senior level for the Irish team. But they just said that the additional resources involved in running a successful club and the more demanding time means that they cannot keep running the club. Now, there has been a bit more out of the club since then. That statement was released last night. And since then, the chairman, Stephen Moran, has also been involved in some interviews where he said that it was additional costs involved in running the successful club, but it was also imperative that football did remain in the region next season and that they hope that someone else will take up the mantle. Now, he said some figures when talking about it on Galway FM. He said that the first year budget was 20,000 and they spent 18,000. This year they will not get change out of 160,000, he said. So I mean, we have no way of verifying those details apart from the fact that he said them, and that is what they are publicly saying. And he also said that it has been on the cards for a while now, because I know it came as a surprise to a lot of people last night. In his statement, he said, even last year, we found it very difficult to be able to give the girls what they duly deserved, all the expertise that they need to get them to play at the elite level. When there's a decision coming down the line, I think for next season is the Women's League will move on to be a semi-professional league. There was no way that we could offer to pay players next year and run the club. Decision was to put it out there now, and it gives other entities a chance maybe to continue on next year. This was coming to boil around July, and without the help of the management of both the senior and the underage, we probably would have had to fold in July. Without their help in that situation, we would not have finished this season out. And he also goes on to say that they also talked to the FAI about it and that they were aware and that they did provide help in this situation. So, I mean, I know I was quite surprised when I read the statement last night. Alanna, were you the same?
Yeah, definitely, Kathleen. Kind of a lot to unpack, I guess. But yeah, pure kind of shock was the first reaction anyways. Just such a shame because, as we all know, there's such talent there in Galway, and that has come out of Galway as well, that it would be a shame to see them just disband like that. And I guess another thing is, while they're saying there's increased costs, and I imagine there is so for every WNL side, that's probably testament to the more resources that are needed to be pumped in, because I know, Karen, you know a lot more about this than me now, but there's a lot that goes in behind the scenes that I don't think people realise that goes into it in the WNL, you know. So I'd say maybe that all kind of came in on top of them, and then yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It was kind of a bit of a ominous one as well, because there was no throw to the future or anything in that regard. It was just very abrupt, I thought, anyways.
Well, that's the thing that was surprising about it, because they seemed to be saying in the statement last night, please someone take this up. And then there was a lot of reports today that, you know, the team was going to be taken in by Galway United, and that was a process that was already started. But then that also introduced the question for a lot of people of, well, why announce this now if that is happening down the line? Why not wait until the end of the season, or wait until there's a bit more of a deal sorted, so you can say, look, we've taken this club as far as we can, but someone else is stepping in. It's great. We hope the legacy continues. Instead, it just seemed to be patting themselves on the back a little bit, Karen.
Yeah, I found the statement strange. Not only the timing of the release. I mean, what's 5 games left in the season? If it was there since July, I kind of think if you come this far, wait till the end of the season, it's just going to bring added kind of eyes on the team, and I guess just start controversial conversations about the Women's National League at a time when we're really trying to grow it. I don't think that Galway will be left without a team, because Galway is a huge footballing county. And if that is the case and they're going under the Galway United belt, the statement at the end of the season would have been like, look, the game has grown. We now see the benefit of amalgamating with a men's team in the way that we saw Raheny do it with Shells, the way that we're seeing all the kind of teams that are on an upward trajectory doing it. It is the way the league is going, and I think we all have to acknowledge that, and it will mean harsh conversations for the likes of, say, ourselves at Peamount, and for I guess DLR Waves, and how long can we keep competing if those costs that he's quoting there are the case, without huge sponsorship coming in. Not having the backing of a men's club is going to be a huge factor in survival. But there is the opportunity for them to have that in Galway, given that they already share the stadium and the facilities there. So I just found it surprising in terms of timing and just the way it was delivered. It wasn't like, oh, there's a plan in place or anything like that. It was kind of like, come and get us. But the rumblings are that United might take them on, but I just found it strange.
You just kind of wondered, though, in that regard, if that was the case, why wasn't that conversation happening behind closed doors? Like they presumably would have had.
It should be behind closed doors and talk about it more as an amalgamation rather than we're done, we can't do it anymore. It should be them. Look, we're working with other people to ensure that good, really good team and good club survives, maybe under a different guise. But I think that the wording was interesting.
And it is interesting, that interview that he gave today, because he delves a bit more into the figures and into the reasoning, but even dropping something into the interview like, I think the league will move on to be semi-pro next year. And this is something we've talked about so many times on the podcast, Karen, and I know there's been a lot of want for it to happen, and obviously there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of making sure that clubs can actually accede to that, and that players are being treated right, and we're not having this massive gap where some clubs can do it and other clubs can't, and all the different issues. But for him to pull Galway out of contention and then just kind of randomly drop and be like, oh, by the way, I think the league is going semi-pro next year, it's not even saying that, you know, down the line there's a feeling of it's very definitive for someone to say without any official reasoning.
Yeah, no official reasoning. And also he's saying it in a way that's saying, oh, it's a barrier. We are driving with the women's game. We want the league to go semi-professional. We want it to go in that direction. So yes, clubs need to change. And yes, there's going to have to be a lot of work put in to get us to like a structured level where players are on contracts and are being looked after in a certain way, and it'll be tiered, and it'll be a lot more paperwork, and it'll be a lot of effort, but in the long run it's a really good thing. So if you have the opportunity where you have an established club with really good underage structures and really good senior team as well, really, really good players, and you're still churning out these players, and there's an opportunity to bring them forward and find a way to help them through. I think that should be the angle they would have taken, saying, okay, we've brought them as far as we can. Now we want this team to go semi-professional. So hopefully someone can come in and help. But it was I just didn't get that kind of, maybe I just didn't feel like that was the way it was delivered. And maybe that's not on purpose, but it just didn't feel to me like that was how it was. I don't know what you felt.
No, I felt the same. And Alanna, I think as well, we probably have the right to be a bit suspicious of Galway in what they say and what they put out, considering the situation where they brought Ruth Fahy in and they promised her to be like, I think she was the first CEO of any women's national league.
They made a big deal of it.
Made a big deal of it. It was a year-long contract. I was reading back over some of the things she said at the time today when she first took it up, and she said, like, look, I know it's a risk. It's a year-long contract. I've just qualified to be a lawyer, but I think this is worth it. And then she was given just 5 months, and they said, well, we didn't have the structures in place to maintain that role. And you're like, well, if you've told someone that you've fundraised for the role and that the money is there, then why don't you have the money to see it through for the rest of the year? So I don't know, for me as well, that was one of the things that came to my mind when I read this statement, where I was like, I don't entirely trust what you're telling me here.
Yeah, you just wonder where the kind of foresight was, especially in that regard. I suppose that's just an example, and maybe it's more of a testament to what was going on, let's say, behind the scenes, that everybody wouldn't have been really seen from Galway WFC. But yeah, as you say, appointing her to the position and then explaining that they didn't have sufficient structures to support it just 5 months later, and it might have been less, I believe. But it just seems kind of ludicrous to kind of say you're going to do something and then pull out at a later stage when you've already committed to it, as you say, the 12-month contract. And I think as well, what Karen was saying there, to bring up the semi-professional status as a barrier was something that is completely mind-blowing to me, because as we all know, women's football is only on the up and up, and to say it in that kind of light, I think puts it in a bad perspective, whereas really it's a positive thing.
It's bait to say come and get us to a club?
I think definitely, yeah. It seems like it was a jolt, because like we were saying there, if not, why doesn't it happen then behind closed doors, and why don't you do it at the end of the season when the games have already elapsed and you don't have any more of the expenses, even if it is amassing up to that amount that he was talking about. You'd wonder though, like, if Galway United do come in for Galway WFC, what the kind of treatment would be there. For some clubs it works out quite well. I'd say Sligo Rovers, it worked out quite well in that, they kind of seem to be promoting them, when they do pictures and that kind of thing, they're all together kind of way. Whereas other clubs, I suppose you're not really too sure how it's going to work out, and whether the FAI are going to kind of mandate that clubs go that direction and kind of have both a one club approach with your men's and your women's teams.
If you have a men's team.
Yeah, that's the other thing, yeah.
Because as well, like,
Alanna, do it retrospectively.
You mentioned Sligo Rovers there, and like we interviewed them on the podcast back before the season started, just to talk to them about how they actually set up the women's team. And for them, it was very much a long-term process, because I remember saying at the time, I was like, as a Sligo person, I'm disappointed it's only coming now. And they were like, yes, we should have done this earlier, but also we wanted to make sure we had certain like amateur set up first and make sure that we had all those building blocks for a successful team. Do you think that this statement and the way it's been dropped, so say if Galway United do take Galway under their wing for next season, or maybe even have to give themselves another season or two, it just seems slightly unfair to whoever does try and build up the team to give them such short notice. And it's not like a long-term process has been put into place where Galway have looked at their figures and said, okay, we probably can't maintain a team for the next few seasons, so we're going to start the process now. And as Karen said, like an amalgamation, whoever does take it up is going to be slightly kind of catching their tail, just trying to keep up with where the other clubs are. Yeah,
definitely. That's an interesting way to look at it. I hadn't actually put it in that perspective, but when you think about it like that, like Sligo, as you say, we're building for that for up on 5 years. How are anybody that's supposed to come in supposed to get the structures up and running to that capacity that quickly? I suppose the other thing is, like, there are other teams already trying to get into the WNL, and while no one would want to see Galway WFC collapse and hopefully they get in under another entity, there's teams like Shamrock Rovers who've been trying to get into the WNL for quite a few years now, and I'm not sure what the barrier is to letting them in, but as in they've been like you're saying there, as well as Sligo, building that up for quite a number of years now. I know Drogheda recently laid plans to have their structures built up with the ultimate goal of having a team as well in the next few years anyways. But they done that and appointed Laura Donovan, who's doing great works there by all accounts. But as in, this all bodes to that you do need to have an incremental plan and a structure and people in place to do all of that. So if you're just dropped at the drop of a hat, and where do you go next? It'd be very hard to get all those people in that quickly.
Yeah, and we should also, I feel like we've done a lot of talk about Galway, but I know you were actually at their match at the weekend. They were playing Sligo Rovers, and we won't mention the scoreline because it was quite a dismantling. But it's disappointing for those players as well. I mean, they're very respectable mid-table at the moment. They probably don't know what's coming down the line. Were you impressed with the way they played at the weekend?
I was at the weekend. Sligo had a strong start now. McGrory hitting the net again. She's been in flying form as of late. But yeah, they started kind of slowly and then built up. As soon as they got a foothold in the game, they were kind of gone past. But I did think Galway would do kind of surpass a bit of the expectations that probably, go past that mid-table finish this year. And they haven't done that as of yet. But they definitely do have the players to do so. From kind of older players like Julianne and Savannah, obviously, who's currently injured at the minute. But they also have younger players like Jenna Slattery and Kate Slevin, are very, very young yet. So that just goes back to what we were saying. They've such a bit of talent. It'd be a shame to see it go to waste.
And Karen, in happier news, I'm going to give you your moment, because it was a bid weekend for you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Finally got your win over Shell.
Yeah, fourth time lucky this season. Yeah.
And kind of did a big blow to their title hopes at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, for us, we've been really disappointed, obviously, with how the season has gone, particularly our results against Shelburne. We know ourselves that we haven't played up to our standards. You probably have seen there's a lot of really good talent in the squad. If you looked at likes of Sive Doyle's performance, Erin McLaughlin, they were superb at the weekend, and we've had a good bunch. There's a bit of disruption, people in and out, and but that's always going to be the case while we are an amateur team and we've lost players. But Shelburne will as well, and that's kind of what happens in an amateur league. But yeah, I mean, once we got over the hump and we beat Athlone in that game, I think that was important for us, because they were sitting above us for such a long time, and for us to be fourth or fifth in the league didn't sit well. So it was good that we got over that. That was a really tough game, and then we've kind of at least kicked on, which shows we have a bit of our steel back, which we definitely didn't show earlier in the season. And on the flip side, Shelburne have had kind of a tough run of fixtures, including their Champions League. So it was kind of the perfect opportunity for us to come in and put in a good performance. We were obviously really happy with it. I'm sure Wexford were probably even more happy with their performance. For us, it was just about getting 3 points and kind of proving that we're still a good team. We're not really looking at the title. We're just kind of taking it game by game, kind of trying to regroup. But Wexford have kind of just silently been tipping away in the background at the start of the season. They didn't have a great start, but they're just one of those teams that don't ever go away.
Yeah, so the league table as it stands, if people haven't been following, is Wexford Youths are on 49, Shelburne are on 48 points, and then Peamount and Athlone are behind on 43. Alanna, who do you think is going to win the league?
I had actually predicted, and I didn't realise they were going to go up on social media, my pick for the cup, the league, player of the year, and then there was young player of the year, I think it was, and I player of the year is Savannah. She got injured very early on the season, and I forget my other ones, but anyways, I had Wexford picked for the league, so I'm kind of smugly, quietly optimistic here. But yeah, I think it's funny, there's always kind of a cycle in the WNL. At this stage, the top teams are going along, and then the WSL or whichever transfer window opens, you get your few top players maybe taken away from you, and then the other talent has to filter through. So I guess that's kind of what happened, Chels, and unfortunately for them, but fortunately for yourselves, Karen and Wexford on Athlone, maybe it kind of gives everyone a chance to catch back up, and then they had the Champions League thrown in on top of that as well. So a lot coming at them at once. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It's always.
I think it could come down to the last game of the season.
Yeah,
Perfect. You couldn't have predicted, if you were a league organizer, a better kind of last game of the season for Shells and Wexford. Obviously, I would prefer if we were still being chatted about at that stage of the season, but I don't think there's much between them. I mean, we just played Shelburne, we still have to play Wexford. I think that Athlone still have to play both teams possibly as well. So some big games coming up.
Shells and Athlone play this weekend. Yeah. So that could be a crucial tie.
And Alanna, you were talking before we started recording about how impressed you had been with Athlone this season, and that they'd kind of been a quiet contender that a lot of people may not have sussed out before the start of the season, but have just been there to trip people up when they needed at least.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was trying not to be pointed about that, Karen.
I'm over it.
I actually just mentioned on the WNL wrap this morning. It's funny, isn't it? Because you guys at Peamount have always been so consistent and up there at the top of the table, and maybe this year kind of have been outside of that top two, let's say. But Athlone, who have been dubbed as like having the season of their club history, are level with you guys right now. But they last year weren't in that same round at all. But I think Tommy Hewitt has done brilliant work there, and they have a lot of young players too. I suppose it'll just be about now whether they can keep hold of them, because Emily Corbett, for example, I'd say could be up there for player of the season. I thought she's been brilliant. You have Myrne Devani, Roisin Malloy. They have a lot of young talent, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see can they kind of build on that again next year.
And with this season, you guys were talking there about the fact that it could come down to the final day. There's a lot of excitement. The organisers couldn't have planned it better. They couldn't have planned it better at the end of last season either. Do you think there was a little bit of like ship shifting? Because we know how much attention it did bring on the league whenever that happened.
I'd say it's not too much of a coincidence.
I love the two big smiles on both of you.
It's funny, the televised games always bring the most drama, I think, anyways, because even that one at the weekend, and then you had the Shelburne Sligo one, and last year as well. So whatever TG Cahir have in the water, they need to bring more of it.
We were calling it up until recently.
Well, hopefully it'll be an exciting end of the season. There's 5-6 rounds left.
Five games.
5 rounds left. Okay, yeah, it was 6 from the weekend. So as you both said, still a lot of play for, still a lot of excitement happening. Would recommend everyone tuning in for any of the games that are on TG Cahir. I actually had quite a few people come up to me in the office today saying that they watched you at the weekend, Karen, and thought it was great. And there were people who wouldn't traditionally watch the Women's National League either, so it's always nice to hear that.
Yeah, big time.
Now, we told you about this last week, but we are keen to help as many clubs as possible. So we are once again looking to give you the opportunity to win some money for your club, which is very exciting. We love doing this. Thanks to our partners at Cadbury's, we're supporting Irish women's grassroots football, and we are giving away all the net profits from our most recent Cadbury Roadshow in Vickers Street, which was a great night of discussion with some very famous faces. Over the next few weeks, we'll be giving you an opportunity to win €1,000 worth of equipment for your local grassroots adult club. To win this money, it's very, very simple. All you have to do to be in with a chance to win it is contact us with your club details and contact information at the COYGIG Pod at offtheball.com. Terms and conditions apply, and head over to otbsports.com for more. So it literally could not be simpler to try and win some money for your club. And that's, I mean, it's what we talk about on the podcast all the time. It's what we like to support through our broadcasting. So it's great to actually have the opportunity to get some equipment to some clubs as well. That's it for this week's podcast. From what we are aware, there will be WSL games this weekend. So we will make sure to review them in full for you next Tuesday. And we will also have Emma Carroll back with a team of the week. Alanna, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you, Karen, once again. I look forward to your next appearance in the national newspapers.
No, I'm going underground
now. We will see you all next week.
The COYGIG Pod on OTB Sports, in association with Cadbury. A player and a half deserves a glass and a half of support.